We hear the term burnout all the time. Is this actually a medical term?
Yes, it's in the ICD-10, which is a psychiatry handbook which lists all the psychiatric conditions. It's a diagnosis of exclusion. There are other things it could be. So things like depression, anxiety, all can lead into burnout. And we'll talk about, hopefully later, about how there's some risk factors for it. But it describes a state of an emotional exhaustion. And that usually means the challenges of life are exceeded by our ability to cope with them. That's how I like to explain it to people. And that can be for multiple reasons. And you did mention a few of them, which was the complexity in the world we live in, and how that can basically overload our nervous system.
An overloaded nervous system. Does that kind of chime with your experience a little bit, Zoe?
I was laughing actually as you were introducing, because you are clearly an expert in the field. I think it's about survival. I don't even think I've given myself, and I've been in business for 35 years and been a founder for 35 years. And I think when you choose the founder path, it is a really tough path. And it's emotional and physical exhaustion. So I think, and I'm laughing as I say that, because laughter and love from family and friends is the thing that gets you through. Because the reality is you're learning to dance on the razor's edge every single day. A daily struggle, honestly, to push through what could be burnout. That's why I was interested in what actually is burnout and what things do we do to cope, right?
And I guess in some cases, we think about it as the very end of the journey. It's when you hit the wall. But are there any warning signs? So if it's happening to you, it might not be that you've necessarily reached the end of that point, but maybe you are on the razor's edge, like Zoe says.
I think it's difficult with pathologies because we often only identify them as problems when they affect our life. So the issue with the definition of burnout is that in that definition, there's the lack of efficacy in your job. So if you are feeling burnt out, but you're doing really good at your job, does that mean you're burnt out? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that is the paradox where people are often asked, do they feel burnt out? But they're top of their business and they're doing really well and high firing, but they feel burnt out, but technically they don't meet because it hasn't affected their performance. One of the other criteria is, and I think from my personal experience as a doctor, because you can get some compassion fatigue, is apathy about what you're doing. So, and I think for me, when have been speaking with patients who are high flying, is that passion that was originally there starts to wane. And that for them is the canary in the mine for their being burnt out.
That's so interesting. I guess when you talk about the idea that you can be doing well but feeling bad, if the productivity is there, if you're hitting the numbers, if everything seems to be going well on the surface, it's almost like that analogy of the swan on the water. Everything looks serene above, but then the kicking is mad underneath the surface.
And that's really everyone now. Like I think society, 10-year-old kids are feeling like this, and 70-year-old people are feeling like this. And that's what's so fascinating. It feels like everyone is at that level now.
And I suppose there's often this idea that we can't slow down, because if we slow down, if we drop the ball, there might be people depending on us. There might be, we've got to pay the bills, we've got to carry on, we've got to look after our kids.
Competition.
As you say, Zoe, it's not necessarily just high-flying business execs that might be dealing with burnt out. You could be any age. So is there anything that we can do? Say we can't take our foot off the brake, we can't stop working. What can we do to kind of prevent us from getting to that end point where it's the end of the road?
Emily, you described it really well there in terms of the end point. What I like to explain to people is that there's a journey to that. So think about burnout as a continuum of emotions and feelings, and having quite hard check-ins on yourself. It's actually something that you can do. So I like using the example of signs within myself that I might not be doing too well, because often people who are on that conveyor belt don't have the insights, and they only get to the point when they're being diagnosed with burnout when they are burnt out. So recognizing the feelings, days when you don't feel as motivated, and not necessarily just pushing on, and developing good actual habits in order to deal with it. So Zoe mentioned connection with family, connection to people, because often people outside of you who are connected to your raw purpose are really good at identifying how to help you through.
So other people can kind of be your mirror and check in on how you're doing. I think that's really good.
And that care for each other is so important, right? When someone asks you, how are you? Or how are you feeling? There's a term in another language, I think it's maybe Greek, and instead of saying, how are you? The translation is, how is the state of your heart in this moment? And it's going deeper on those little interactions too, right?
I hope that you're enjoying this episode with Zoe and Dr. Amos, but I want to pause for a second to tell you about our sponsor, Visit Costa Rica. I did just that last month, and between yoga sessions in the jungle with sunlight filtering through the canopy, swimming in volcanic hot springs, and connecting with nature, Costa Rica fixed me up, mind, body, and soul. Home to 6.5% of the world's biodiversity, it's an incredible place to connect with nature. If, like me, you've ever dreamt of seeing humpback whales in the wild, turtles, tree frogs, and sloths, Costa Rica delivers. And all these species are protected, along with the country's beautiful coastal reefs. Pura Vida is the heart of Costa Rican culture, and this translates as a pure life. It's also the reason so many people seek out Costa Rica for health, healing, and a genuine opportunity to start living well. Now, on with the show. Because we're quite conditioned to just sort of say, oh, I'm fine, how are you?
Yeah.
I know I always do that. But I think those important moments of checking in with yourself that you mentioned are really useful too. I've certainly got a bit better at that, and I do notice that if I'm starting to feel like things are a little bit overwhelming, one of the things I'll often do is delete social media.
Really?
And I won't look at it, and I'll maybe take a break for a day, a couple of days, and it's hard for me sometimes because I think, oh no, I've got to be online, I've got to show up, I've got to post, I've got to check what other people are doing, but actually it soothes me to not be bombarded with information, and it means that I can relax a little bit. And I suppose, Zoe, you can maybe speak to that, because we know that social media in so many ways can be quite toxic, and that's why you've almost created an alternative.
The toxicity on social, it was one of the main things we addressed, right? We completely redesigned, re-architected and reimagined what social could be. You know, how do we put all the good bits on steroids, you know, all the good bits of Instagram, and, you know, if you choose to watch an ad, the money gets shared with you. If you want to link out from a post, go and read that article, because we actually just want to inspire you for 8 minutes a day. But to get to that table stakes, we had to block the hate. And in a world where the tech leaders are saying wheeling back from moderation and choosing not to do it in the name of freedom of speech, we really doubled down on that and have spent the last 5 years committing to it and training AI models to build a gigantic 8-eye shield that scans 250 million videos a day, that supports all comments, content, profiles, and it blocks all toxicity and hate. And it is so exciting because all the kids coming into this world now, we've forgotten what it's like to live in a world where we're not abused.
Where we're nice to each other.
Right. I look at the Lionesses, and the abuse that the players got was very similar to what Saka and the players got in the Euros years ago. And it is not okay. So we committed to building the antidote to that. Let's look after each other. Can we just be kind? And I think it comes back to that idea that everyone's burnt out. Everyone's just tired. And when people are spending 4 to 6 hours a day on social media, that's, 3 to 4 months of their lives every year. And it doesn't make you feel loved or good. So it's a holistic problem. Let's lift each other up.
It's interesting when you speak, because obviously you were saying, I feel like because other social media companies it's more of a race to the bottom in terms of what keeps you in that state of engagement is often what actually overrides your nervous system. So fear, anger, very strong emotions. And I imagine that our brains aren't built to feel that way constantly. And therefore, it's not strange to me that is a driving force in a lot of the burnout for people.
Right? It is. We believe, and it'll be evidenced over the next sort of 6 months, and this is why we're getting massive support from all the Scandinavian markets, for example, because they're really putting people first. Like, I think this desire to move from big tech control to a new world of freedom and unity, like what social media can be when you fix all the bits, is amazing. But how it makes you feel, like now that I'm in this world, the world of 8, when I go to Insta and open it, I actually can feel it energetically immediately hit my nervous system. I have to force myself. It's like, not Lord of the Rings, but the energy, because the amazing thing about human energy is we think it's amazing that data can fly through our phones, like that's some sort of brilliant thing. It's brilliant, but not compared to the power of human energy and loving energy and good intention. We can feel that from the other side of the world when a friend of mine in Australia or America or Nigeria thinks, and we're connected because the intention is pure. And that's all of that. We in parallel to, looking after each other, we need to become more resilient as well. I think we need to toughen up as well as loving each other and ourselves. Like,
that balance is quite difficult to strike though, isn't it? Because on the one hand, we've got let's be kind to each other. And on the other hand, we've got toughen up. And in some cases, we've still got a lot of stigma, which says we should all be a bit more resilient and we should just let this stuff roll off. But actually, if we're being bombarded with awful content, actually, no, we should just be kinder to each other. So it's really hard, isn't it, to make that distinction. And I do think that even now, where taking a mental health day is normalized, there are still people that will say, what are you doing that for? You need to toughen up. So I think it's really tricky until we're kind of all on the same page to be able to give adequate care. Say you're in a business or...
And what does toughen up mean? Like,
exactly.
I say it towards myself because when things are hurtful, we've got to be able to bounce back. We have to be able to. And I want to have an honest conversation with you about the tough stuff.
Yeah.
And I have to know that said safely. So when I say tough, I don't mean hard. What I mean is real. I want to have the really tough conversations, the difficult ones, and can we get real and honest, and can we start learning? I want to learn from you fast. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think there's a need for us to all be a bit more authentic, especially on social media as well, because we are bombarded with a lot of nonsense, a lot of content that is just content for content's sake, right? Yeah. It's not really enriching our lives. It's not teaching us anything. It's not really doing much for our mental health.
Yeah, I think what I agree with in the whole process is when I talk about resilience, I think about it as a muscle that you work rather than an innate ability. So often the conversations we have and the zeitgeist are that people are resilient and they're not. And it's almost like a blanket statement about someone's character.
It's quite binary, right?
Yeah, it's very binary. And it's not really helpful because, as Zoe mentions, there are things you can put in place to help that resilience. And self-knowledge is really resilience. So knowing your boundaries and knowing what things, that in itself, I think often people see resilient people and don't realize that resilience is an active process of working towards it rather than an innate feeling. I talked about how your day is probably more hectic than the average person's, but you will have inbuilt ways of centering yourself. And that makes you more resilient, which you've had to learn. So if someone asked you 35 years ago to do what your day was like today, I doubt that you probably would do that.
I'd be in the corner.
Yeah. And that's
in a ball,
rocking backwards and forwards.
And that's so important to state, is because often people raise people like you as a paragon of resilience, which you are, but it's very important that you have the frank conversations of how you got to that point, which isn't a linear process. It's learning and it's sometimes failure, I assume.
Totally. And it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Still, even when you know how to cope with it, right?
There are going to be times where you aren't able to scaffold yourself through the process. And through that learning point, you become more resilient. And that's what I think when I hear about AIDS, I hear about something which is community, which helps build resilience, where often you hear about communities which are there to kind of a zero-sum game. My resilience comes at the expense of yours. So if I'm dishing out a hate to a group, does that make me more resilient if they are beneath me socially, or do I feel that? And that's, I think, that zero-sum game of resilience, which I try to guide against.
I think that's really wise, especially when we think about any person moving through the world in real life outside of social media. We can be very shut off to each other. You talk about energy, Zoe. You know, you can feel a vibe in a room, right? We all can. And we can certainly pick up on whether someone is making us feel welcome and calm, and that's good for our nervous system, or whether they're making us feel defensive and uncomfortable. And a lot of how we spend our day is at work, with our family, with our friends. We are almost soaking up all of our surroundings all the time. And that is one of the things that can also contribute to whether we feel safe and relaxed or whether we feel exhausted and burnt out, right?
We're social creatures, aren't we?
Totally. And that's why the kids, I've got 3 sons, twin 17 and 20-year-old, but kids generally are much more isolated. So when their social interactions are through Snapchat and other platforms, and it's sort of haloed in this fear-based, is someone judging me, the whole thing, it's you're not getting that beautiful human social thing, right? And that's, how do you see? You would probably see that a lot.
It's the paradox of connection, right?
Yeah.
So I see, and I still do general practice, so I still see a lot of young children who believe they're connected, but what they actually are is isolating their thinking and in silos, whereby the world exists in the way that they see it. And it's almost, we spoke again off camera about health beliefs and how it becomes zealots, and you only hear information that agrees with your worldview, and the other side is the enemy. And you have really like children who are very impressionable, who are not aware of how their daily interactions with this information shifts the way their brain is actually structured. And functionally for me, when you meet them at the end of that journey and you try and challenge, so you check their understanding of the world, it's very linear and binary. So
Totally.
we talk about burnout. Burnout is for the weak. That they're either incapable because they're burnt out, and which is a negative health belief, or that they're not burnt out because that's for people that are weak. Then that's really hard as a clinician to actually counteract once it's already inbuilt.
The idea of mental health issues as weakness as well is still quite pervasive, isn't it? I mean, we have all these systems and processes now where we can take a mental health day. You know, we've got wellbeing room here at the Independent, we've got great courses, we've got coaches. I didn't have that a few years ago. You know, when I first started my career, I remember being in a situation where you might get the sack if you didn't do unpaid overtime. Mm-hmm. And
Totally.
Everyone was very, very nervous and wound up about that. So, you know, in a way, we're moving towards more care, more consideration, but we're also maybe not teaching kids to think critically, to be more resilient at the age that they're at. So we've maybe got a way to go when it comes to actually preventing burnout before it happens, because it can be a kind of preventative medicine approach, I guess.
Oh, yeah. It has to be. It has to be, one, societal, and you've mentioned some of the prevailing beliefs about mental health, because it is tied in. People with mental health issues have more issues with burnout, and it has to be an individual, so ownership. So you are responsible in part for your own resilience, and that is not in terms of you are to blame for the lack of ability to cope, but it's also important that you have agency in the way that you approach that. I think adding agency to people empowers them, so giving them that responsibility to keep the environment healthy, as if that is important. That human beings, when they get behind the screen, often become something that they're not. And there's none of that social responsibility. It's the reason why when trolls get revealed, it's the people you don't expect, because those people, and that is a problem.
Yeah.
There's such a disconnect between our own online life and our real life. But for a lot of children, that is their life.
Totally. Right? It's their whole
It's everything.
existence.
Yeah.
It's their whole world.
There are people, and I remember I wrote a quote, and I can remember who it was from an actor, is that I can destroy my life with a tweet, and that's like that's it. You're the entirety of your existence, and navigating a world with that knowledge. There's a lot of things that I did when I was younger, which was stupid, which wasn't captured in HD and 4K surround sound, and I couldn't tweet it out. That doesn't exist in this world. I mean, I've got my sister's a teacher, and she'll go to McDonald's and she'll see a kid that she has, and they'll be filming her. That's the world that they live in, and that is scary, because there's a fear of experimentation. There's a fear of discovery, because you just fit into what the silo tells you the group is protected in.
And total fear.
Yeah.
All the time. Like the entire existence is fear of what will other people think.
Yeah.
Right. And so that it sort of dissolves any, like I grew up in the 80s. It was free and stupid and bad perms and huge shoulder pads and dancing and idiocy.
It all comes back though.
I know,
That's
sadly.
what Mom always told me. It all comes back.
Oh my God. But it was free, and I just think this is not just from a social perspective, but the idea of how joyful the tough conversations are. You know, when you have a real, because there's a lot of surface stuff. I mean, we've built the mental health support button. We've got the protection shield, because we've all got so much in common. And as humanity, AI as a species has been born, right? So we need, and it has learned from the old world, greed, power, control. Like, for us to navigate a future, we need to love each other and look after each other and not be scared. Like, fear and ego are the two things, right? And so I think that it's how we navigate knowing we can speak honestly to each other about what's broken.
I wonder if either of you, or maybe both of you, could give some advice to anyone listening about how to have a tough conversation, because whether that's a tough conversation with someone who you don't agree with, whether it's a conversation where you're being honest about your mental health, whether it's putting your hand up and saying, I feel burnt out, to your boss, how can we approach those tough conversations with authenticity and be really honest?
The thing that I always say when it comes to having difficult conversation is that to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Totally.
In terms of compassion. I have a friend who says, don't assume anyone's got malice, they could just be an idiot. Which means in the context of...
I love that.
In the context of they just don't understand yet, which is fine. But obviously in the way I describe the conversation is not to have a conversation speaking down to people, but good faith conversation is really important. Entering conversation not to win an argument, but to express yourself. No one else is an authority in how you feel other than you. So it actually becomes a position of the person having the conversation, you're letting them into your world. And that conversation, if you start, because often when you have issues with burnout, it changes the way you perceive the world. And that's what we talked about as having scaffolds around you. So the one thing I tell myself when I felt burnt out is the people around me still love me. They just don't understand that I'm burnt out. So how can I communicate to them in a way whereby I'm assuming they want the best for me, even though I don't feel that at the moment. And that usually makes the conversation go a little bit better. So not assuming that the people around you do not care about the fact you're burnt out.
That's really good advice. And I also like the idea that you can kind of frame something in a way that is positive, whichever way you look at it. Even if you don't necessarily believe it, you can set up, as you say, that scaffold for yourself. That's really smart.
I wrote this thing the other day because the name of 8 is We Are 8, right? The 8 is the representation of the infinite connection
sign. Yeah, I love that.
And the unlimited infinite potential of us coming together. But the we are is actually just as critical because it's everything. When the I only exists when we're we. Yeah. Otherwise, the I doesn't really exist. And I feel now when everyone is screaming in the void on social, screaming to be seen and heard, no one is getting seen and heard because there's no place for we. And so I often find it's amazing how you can go through a whole day and no one asks you a real question on what you think about something. Mm-hmm. And so I really try to ask, what do you think about this? I'd love your thoughts on this, a difficult question. I'd love you to be honest with me. And I did this thing once where I actually asked people, this was a random, no scientific, I'm a data person, but this was not scientific. And I gently asked people if they'd ever had suicidal thoughts of everyone I met with. And I said, you do not have to answer this question. I will never share this and never share any information about you, nothing, but I'm interested to know. It was over 70%, like it was huge, the amount of people and people you would not expect. And when we dug into what are those thoughts like, how do they manifest, what do they feel like, they are real. Like this is a thought of, I don't want to live. I would rather not be here. And that's when I became obsessed with, how do we address this together? How do we look after each other? And the little things that I can try and do is, I'd love your thoughts on this.
You got me in the rabbit hole as well. I had really weird, and it's probably not a tangent, but it actually fits in. I had one of the most profound experiences with a patient I've ever had yesterday. So I'm not getting too much details away, but there's a GP practice which is set up to look after the homeless. So I ran a clinic there yesterday, one of the first times I've ever done that. And I asked one of the patients there, and this is this conversation, because he used a word that really, and I'm not afraid to admit that I shed a tear afterwards, which was quite difficult, really weird for me, where I asked him how and what's happened, because when you deal with their medical stuff, it's like, oh, bang, 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 antibiotics, fine. And I had a few minutes left, and I was like, right, so what happened? Tell me what's going on and how you're feeling. And that was the first time. But the story wasn't what got me. It's what he said afterwards, because he used the phrase during the consultation, and I felt it was very real, and I felt that everyone can describe it. And he called it soul pain. He called it deep soul pain. And he goes, if you're asking me, doctor, genuinely, what has brought me this such deep soul pain? And he described like quite a horrific turn of events. I don't want to go in detail. And then I was there going, okay, I don't know how to make this better, but okay.
Listen, right?
Yeah. And at the end, he gets his stuff because he's rough sleeping. And he goes, thanks for listening, doc. And then he shook my hand and he walked out. And I was just like, oh my God, I haven't done anything there. But I could just see he went from being, there was a humanization part of it, which I wasn't expecting. I thought there was going to be an explanation, and he was a bit of a philosopher in the way he explained it. I thought it was going to be this is the world's fault. And he described it in a way which is, this is what's happened to me deep in my soul, and I'm aware of it, and thank you for listening. And I was just taken aback by it. And I think that's a bit of what you're talking about in the world, whereby when you ask people if they're in pain, deep soul pain, there's a lot of people who are just walking around with that state, waiting for someone to ask them. And there was a moment where I was watching him talk, and I was like, I've seen you in hundreds of people, and your circumstances bad, but there's lots of walking well who, if I asked them if they're in pain, the answer is yes.
And that is the most beautiful story. And the term soul pain, I've never heard that before.
Me neither. Yeah.
I've not heard it before either.
It is, you've just described the state of the world. Like I feel it as you tell the story, and that is the world, like that, we're right on the cusp of that, like where every everyone I know I think would be feeling.
Yeah, and it's so ubiquitous. It's just a way of describing. I just feel there's a lot of people who might be having the best life in the world aesthetically looking at it, but what he described in that moment was kind of a state, which I don't think I don't think it's unique. And when you talk about the way you see, that's why I think it's remarkable what you're doing. The social environment, there are people who don't know how to get themselves out of that soul pain and probably don't even realize they're in it. And they're constantly feeding it, waiting for the next piece of information that's going to relieve that soul pain.
And we've all just got to hold hands and dance in the trees.
But what you both do is kind of creating space for that to come to the surface, right? So you created a moment for someone to actually admit that that's what they're going through. You create a container in We Are 8 for people to actually talk about that. So actually the work that you're both doing, it goes such a long way to helping people deal with, whether we call it soul pain, whether we call it trauma, whether we call it burnout or exhaustion, whatever that is that someone is holding on to, you're both creating space for people to actually have those conversations, which I think is remarkable.
It made me feel very emotional.
I felt quite emotional there.
I'm completely.
I just didn't expect it. I didn't expect it. I honestly, you have these conversations and you almost pigeon. I think sometimes as a doctor, I like to think I'm caring, but sometimes you do get compassion fatigue because you kind of just start seeing, what's that line? If you are a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail.
Yeah.
So like it's health problems. It's health problems. Yeah. What's wrong with you? Antibiotics. Blah, blah, blah. And then I just was just like, okay, I've sorted your problem out. I've got about 10 minutes left. I thought I was going to be like, I thought I was going to hear conspiracy theories, and then he's just like, he just said, I'm just in a lot of soul pain.
Do you know, it's really funny because we've built all these, hearing that, because it cuts right to why we built 8, and even the AI shield, which, by the way, everyone said, you're not going to be able to build that. The biggest tech companies in the world haven't been able to build that. I said, no, we've got 50 AI engineers. We are going to design and build this. And it was because, well, firstly, I didn't want to build the future of social where I found out that one kid was trolled and died. Like, I can't have that on my watch in our house. But when I hear you talk about this, the urgency of that, and how quite quickly, I think, in a space where, can we actually breathe here? You know, can we actually start breathing again? Because we've forgotten that when people feel so judged and they don't feel like they can breathe anymore, or that someone's actually got me, even when they give you a compliment, it's, as you said, is it authentic? I don't even feel like that's real, and I'm still reeling from the negative. Are you really thinking that, like that, how do we go back to, let's all just, when in our conversation feed, we thought, and people are having amazing conversations, but you know the thing that people love? Good morning. How are you feeling? Like all the fundamental, we're going to create this thing that's feels like a morning hug, like a positivity thing, but not fake positivity. A thing where it's vibe streams where you can choose your vibe. Like, you know, choose your vibe, run through the trees, 80s dance, give me the news, whatever your vibe is. Like, you're back in control and we've got you. Do you feel, okay, I've got my people? Like, do you feel like you're...
Community, right? That is the big problem, right? It's finding a tribe of people where it's not based on hate. That's one of the issues. I don't know how much of this is in human psychology, but united against a cause or against something tends to bring people together.
Our tribalism tends to rear its ugly head, doesn't it? And we tend to think, let's all be haters together.
Yeah, and it's almost like
let's be lovers together.
Yeah. It's like when I was in school and I failed a test, I'd always feel a lot better if other people failed it with me. like just like we all got the questions wrong. It's fine. Yeah. It's good. Like,
I can't believe you ever failed a test.
Strong and wrong.
You're a doctor. You would have been the rock star.
Strong and wrong. But it is. I think what needs to be defined is what community is, and community can't be we both hate the same people. And that is the problem. That is essentially, when I think about community, I'm a massive football fan. I've worked in football most of my professional life now. And even I dislike certain teams, and it takes me a while, even though I've got family members who support those teams, to if I see them in the shirt. My dad's a Chelsea fan, so I'm just like, I love you, but please. But
Get that shirt
off. It's one of those things whereby it's inbuilt to us, and it's a conscious effort to guide against that. I don't understand, sometimes it is quite silly. The problem is when that silly thought, I mean, it's obviously the tribalism of football is quite minor, becomes real world hate. And that, I think, is fortunately the world we're in at the moment, whereby there's actions which are created by people who've never interacted with each other.
Right.
Yeah.
We look at Tattle, it was one of these huge sites where everyone was united in just saying the worst things about influencers and celebrities, and they loved it. And these threads got really out of control, and I wrote an article a while back about how my name popped up on there, and it was terrifying to see people who I'd never met speaking about me out of context. And
it does hurt.
It hurts.
It's one of those things whereby
you're beautiful and amazing.
You're wonderful human being.
Really.
It's no matter who you are, I do think that our innate defensiveness of protecting ourselves and our people that we like, gets there, that it still invokes a really visceral reaction in us. My friends always say, well, just turn off the computer. Well, no, I still feel like they've just shouted that in my face. But
isn't it funny, because we've forgotten the feeling? No, it's really not funny. It's the truth. It's really horrific.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's horrific, right? Because we've forgotten what safety brings.
Mm-hmm.
I actually want you to be able to tell me, Zoe, these are the things I really find challenging about you, and to trust it enough, because I want to learn, I want to get better, I want to improve myself. I'm still going to be beating myself up that I said we have to toughen up. We beat ourselves up, because I tell myself every day we beat ourselves up. And if we have that space, if we can make mistakes and not think, oh shit, I've said something wrong, I'm going to get abused, or tell me the worst things about me, because I know you love me enough not to mind. That
it's the idea of having a safety net, I suppose. The idea of leaping, taking a risk, being cringe, and not worrying that you're going to fall from a great height, that actually you're going to be caught.
Because then I can be resilient. If I know under it, we're going to catch you, and you can tell me the worst things and it's okay. Oh my God, because we're going to discover we've got so much more in common. Where are our minds and our brains to think we're different as human beings? We have so much in common.
I think my question to you is that I think that is beautiful, and I do find that incredible. Do you think, and this is my business hat on, why do you think that other companies lean in towards the controversy? Is it because it's, I don't
money.
know how, yeah.
It's
that's essentially
all
what I thought.
Following the money trail. So the company I built before this, we tracked ad spend around the world. I mean, this year, and we literally saw Facebook and Insta take all the money out of the market. This year it'll be $200 billion that will go to Meta. None of that gets shared with people, communities, charities. So we spent 4 years restructuring the economic models. Mm-hmm. So on 8, we make our money in the same way. So McDonald's will pay us for an ad, but we share 50% with people. Mm-hmm. So people get paid when they watch an ad. Mm-hmm. 4% goes to a charity of the brand's choice, 1% to planet projects, 5% to a creator and infrastructure fund. I was seeing all your great things about the NHS, because I want to take 1% of that and put it into a nurses fund, 1% and put it into a teachers fund, because that whether we notice it or not, big tech are the global governments. They are taking the money from the time and value of the people, and they're not putting back into society. So because our model takes the ad out of the feed, you have the choice to watch. People complain on 8 about not getting enough ads, but it unlocks everything. People can pay their Spotify, etc. But on what that means is, in the old world, if they're jamming ads into a feed, and so they have to keep you scrolling longer, so they jam more ads in and make more money. The only way, we want to kick people off after 8 minutes and go and live and whatever. If you have to keep people scrolling to make more money, to deliver against shareholder return, you have to make it toxic. So the algorithms have become worse and worse and worse and worse. It is all money. It's money and it's greed and power and control.
This is no question lead up, and we might, it's still on track. I imagine the AI revolution is accelerating that inequality. As in, before, adverts they were smart, but they're not as smart as they are now.
And they're dangerously not smart, because AI is fast, but it doesn't have the filter. That's why we've now just built this golden shield, not just of protection from abuse, but of misinformation, because it's like it pulls an AI query. Oh, someone said that eating a rock every day is really good for your health. And it's spitting out, AI has now killed a child in the US. Like it is pulling all human knowledge. And that is so dangerous. So you combine that with the super highways of death. And I think of these platforms, because they don't let you out, I think of them as just destroying our lives. They don't let you out. Whereas we link out from every post. Go back to your website. If you're a musician, go and download that on Spotify. It's life versus death. Actually, I changed my name a year ago. I was changing my last name. I've got a beautiful husband, and his name was Sanskrit. His last name was Kalar, Sanskrit. So I thought, I've always hated my first name. I'm going to change that too. So I was Sue, and I changed it to Zoe, which means life in Greek. I got so much shit, by the way, about changing. I thought, hang on a minute. Surely that is one thing that we own. I could call myself, it's our name. But it's literally, do we choose life and togetherness, or do we choose death? And I think for me, that's the one thing that, being able to laugh, love who you're working with. Otherwise, I think the world's at a point where there's soul pain. I'm going to literally be thinking of you every day. I'm going to be quoting you every day with that story. Otherwise, but there is hope now. Like there is, when we come together, it's so beautiful.
I guess it's the idea that we do have to accept our humanity. We have to accept that we are stronger together, we can do more together, and that we can't do it all. The idea that we are in intense competition, that social media wants, well, certainly, the model for these tech companies is growth at any cost. Why does it have to be at any cost? Why does it have to be at the cost of our health? I think the idea really is that there doesn't have to necessarily be a cost if we spot the signs of burnout, if we spot the signs of poor mental health, and we hold a mirror up to each other. Yeah.
I think when Zoe talks about the money and talks about the idea that there is profitability in our burnout, that is something that worries me a little bit, because that rings true, doesn't it? If you are a commodity, which is your attention, then it makes sense to spend that until it's done, right? Because then you'll come back, right? Because you're addicted to this, you're addicted to the problem. We can flog you, and then we can let you rest and come back, right? There's no benefit in you keeping your interaction very small for a period of time. And I think there needs to be a way of almost changing the conversation around that, and actually and this is why these conversations are important, recognizing that that is a massive contributor for how you feel in the world. And you're talking about taking social media breaks. I've done that before, and I've literally, it's almost like I've taken a happy pill where I've just like, the world is not bad anymore. Like, what's going on? And it's because your top of your newsfeed is the things that get you emotionally hepped up. And I used to be in the world where I used to wake up in the morning, check my phone. And before I get my day going, I've had half an hour of the worst bits have happened whilst I've slept.
And you know when you don't see your friends in the feed, so you keep scrolling?
Yeah.
That's also intentional. Whereas, because that keeps you scrolling, because on some unconscious level, you go into an unconscious brain state, you keep scrolling, but you're actually you're searching.
Oh, wow.
So we have the main feed, and then we have a following feed, everyone you're following and your friends. Just that, no ads, all in chronological order, because it's the cruelest thing actually and actually the addiction to our insecurities. They've literally got us to follow me on Instagram, follow me. How many followers have you got? I've got this many followers. It's a complete scam, because the reality is in the back end. When I look at Taylor Swift or whatever, 430 million followers, she has to block comments because of hate, and then she gets 0.01% engagement because they strangle Vogue magazine, right? 50 million followers, 100 comments on a reel. And that makes people say, what did I do wrong? I feel so insecure, so I work it. It's like playing the casino. We'll never win, whereas on 8, we unlock the algorithms so your followers see you. And the natural behavior, people get often more comments than even love, because we're seeing just natural social behavior. We've been like, my belief, I'm hopeful, because it's like we've been in it's sort of an abusive relationship with a boyfriend, but we haven't realized it. Yeah. And we've all been in it together, and we're so scared of leaving. Then we're going to just dip our toe in over here, and then we're going to go, oh my God.
There's life outside of this. Yeah.
How do you win the war then? This is what I find fascinating about what you're saying, because it sounds like you've identified the problem, and you're working against a system which is designed to appeal to the worser angels of our nature. It's almost like it's like me as a doctor saying eat healthily, but everything that tastes good is literally going to kill you. It's like,
keep doing what you're doing, but actually you are going to feel totally amazing to do this for 8 minutes a day.
Oh, okay.
Keep doing what you're doing. I actually literally keep doing because the worst thing you can do is feel bad about something else. We all feel bad about everything. Keep doing that. Dip your toe in over here and gently build. And this is why it's key for us, the whole Scandinavian markets and this whole Operation Northern Lights. And then when you like it enough, you invite a friend and da-da-da. We only need 1% of the human population, 80 million people, together on 8, and we will be, firstly, pumping more money back to people, planet projects and charities than the Gates Foundation in 1 year. Wow. Like 1% of humanity can change the world, totally. But then imagine we're not just, we're a collective. So we'll be able to send a push notification saying, watch this ad and donate to get blankets to Syrian refugees today. Or watch this ad and get someone through Fair Share a meal. We can get a meal to someone for 20p. Or watch this, or close your eyes for 60 seconds. Let's all do this at 8 o'clock tonight and imagine 2 groups on a border walking towards each other and hugging.
But there are these studies about group meditation actually being able to change how people feel afterwards for a long time, and how that actually ripples out and impacts others. So there is a lot to that kind of group, collective, positive thought, right?
My question on that is actually one of more practicality, right? So I'm really inspired by what you're talking about. And what I find it really interesting, and I imagine, and I can see this. It's becoming and will become successful. How do you, as a person, guard against something like 8 becoming super successful, and then the actual pull towards becoming negative? Because I believe that a lot of social networks are created in order to connect people, but almost morph into something that they're designed not to be. How do you plan for that day?
I've built it and designed it from the beginning for that, because fixing the economic model first was the most important thing. And because, they just created I'm sure they didn't mean it, right? We're free and always will be, but unless you work out how you can support the platform costs, the engineers, the framework, without exploiting the people, you will end up being the same thing. What we worked out is people are more valuable to themselves and us, and we can be transparent and highly profitable, but in a transparent way, and help everyone when you share. And the funny thing is, it's literally sharing the money transparently. It's fully sustainable. Like, this could be home base for the next 10 years because the economic models work, and then all the mental health stuff and everything else. And that freedom, our society, we as humans haven't experienced that level of freedom. Like, the idea that a kid, if I was having my life again, I would have just had a cooking show, a little cooking video thing on 8 from when I was 12 years old, and I would have hopefully built up 40,000 followers. If I had 40,000 followers and they were all seeing me on 8, I'd be making, probably not just from watching ads, but if I could distribute my stuff and talk about brands and have 40,000 followers, I'd be making around 10, 20 grand a year from direct brand deals easily.
I feel like you and I both missed a trick there.
Yeah, damn.
No, this is a now. This is enough exploitation. It's out the other side of this, it's whoosh.
And I love the fact that throughout all of this, there's been this golden thread of do a little bit, do a small bit.
Just a little bit.
Do it, a small habit. So I want to ask you as my final question, I ask all the guests on well enough this question, and it's hard to get it into one answer, but if there was one wellness non-negotiable, one habit or thing that you would advise, what would be the one thing that you would say is your big wellness rule? As a doctor, that must be quite a hard one to answer.
As a doctor, I'm running through the list. I'm going to go quite personal here because I know how much of a nightmare I can be when I haven't done this. So mine will be movement. Mine will be conscious. I'm not talking about exercise. I'm talking about getting myself moving, get myself walking, and actually dedicating 45 minutes a day. And I call it soft strokes, like a period of time when I'm going to be kind to myself, and that often involves movement. That's it. That would be mine.
I love that. And also there's so much research that shows that you don't have to do high intensity workout. Walking is the one, right? Yeah. Just getting yourself moving is really, really important for longevity. So I love that. So simple as well. Yeah. What about you, Zoe? What would your one wellness non-negotiable be?
Do you know, my mother passed recently, and I actually feel her everywhere now. But she was magical and beautiful. And even at the very end, she taught me the thing was let go. And because since a little girl, I was always told, you're so sensitive, stop being so sensitive. And I feel it deeply, which the soul pain, so I think it's try and just let it go. Every day, the things that hurt you, just let it go. So if I can do that throughout the day and then survive the day, I'm happy. And then hugs, try and find a bit of a laughter moment. Laughter is a survival mechanism for me. Laugh at yourself, at the stupidity, at the insanity of this planet. If there were other planets looking down, they'd be going, what are they doing?
That is great advice.
Let go.
And it's hard, isn't it? We have to train ourselves to get used to that feeling. But if you are able to do it, it can really change your life, right? Thank you so much for such a brilliant conversation. I have learned so much just from talking to you both. If you want to download We Are 8, you can find it on the App Store and Google Play. Have a little look at it. You can find Dr. Amos on television and on Instagram. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Well Enough. We will see you next time. And in the meantime, stay well.